welcome to episode 16 of Eye on Horror. I'm your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your host, Jacob Davison. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing good. Always happy to be back.
And also your other host, John Correa. How you doing, John?
I'm doing excellent. How are you guys today?
I'm doing well. With a question mark? That didn't come out like I was.
Doing well?
I think I'm doing well.
I'm sorry. Do you have a rough holiday season, James?
I don't feel like I had a holiday season, but you know, hey, that's me. I hope everybody had a happy holiday. And this is our last episode of the year, which means it's top 10 time.
Woo!
Woo! But first, let's see what we've been watching. The big thing that came out recently that is all over the place, it's even taken over the memes, is Bird Box. You guys check out Bird Box?
Yeah, I watched it on Netflix.
I don't need to. I've been on Facebook in the last fucking 3 days. Like, come on,
good.
Here's my
good
thing
point.
with Netflix. I don't think they make movies or television to like entertain or get people to subscribe. I legitimately think they just try to gauge how much social media interaction they get. And yeah, this one's annoying as fuck.
There were a lot of memes out of this one.
Yeah, it's doing it. What'd you think, Jacob?
I mean, honestly, I think I may need to rewatch it again, but yeah, it was all right. I mean, you know, there've been a lot of comparisons made to A Quiet Place, although the book was out before then. Because, you know, it's like a Quiet Place, you can't make noise, and in Bird Box, you can't see.
I thought it was more like The Happening than A Quiet Place.
Oh, shit, I forgot about The Happening.
It was very happening-y.
Well, at least it wasn't the trees this time.
Yeah. I loved when I first turned it on and it first started, and the opening scenes when shit's going down, I was like, oh, this is my number one of the year. This is awesome. And then, started to lose interest and less interested, and there was definitely diminishing returns on it. And by the time it got to that week ending, I was like, did I really just watch that? But I have to remind myself how great the first act is. So Bird Box was a tale of two movies for me because, there's a beginning and an end, but the beginning is way better for me than the end. So it was okay. But what about Bandersnatch, the new Black Mirror episode? Oh. I haven't played it. And I say played it because if you don't know, if you have not heard about Bandersnatch, it's kind of set up like a choose your own adventure game through it's Netflix, right?
Yeah, it's Netflix, and
it's because it's an episode of Black Mirror. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's advertised as a Black Mirror movie, but really it is a game. And the best part is I watched it last night with my girlfriend, and we were like, oh, we're going to make these decisions together. But I took over for a good portion of it because I just kept... Whenever you give me a choice, especially in video games, I'm going to pick up the more fucked up one. I'm going to pick up the... Oh, and this does not... At least didn't happen when I played it. It's like, do you save the child or do you let the whole bus fall into the river? I'm going to go, let's see what happens. Let's see if that bus can float. Let's see.
Which is going to be a cooler scene.
Yeah. And I kept doing that, and it went there. I will say this, Bandersnatch, it's not a movie, it's a game. That's what it comes down to, is it's choose your own, especially when you play it on something like, we played it on my PS4. The controller vibrated right before any decision came up, so we'd be sitting there and all of a sudden it went, and the first time it happened, we weren't expecting it, so the controller's just like on the table next to me, all of a sudden it vibrates, and I went, what the fuck? My phone's in my hand, and then all of a sudden, like, we saw the choices come up, and we're like, oh shit, it's happening right now. Do we pick the Sugar Puffs, or do we take the Frosted Flakes? Which literally was the first thing. And then from there, it just, like, goes on. And I will say this, like, granted, I get it. Everyone's going to have a different experience. We're all going to pick, like, different things. I don't think too many people are going to pick the same line right off the bat unless they read about it or something. But overall, like, it functions really well, not only as a choose your own adventure, but more importantly, it functions really well as a good Black Mirror episode. And it really plays around with the ideas of sanity, the ideas of alternate dimensions and technology. And it gets, on some adventure points, it gets extremely meta. And others it could take a lot of different ways. And what I liked also is that it didn't feel like, oh, pause, make your decision. It just felt like, all right, what are you going to do? And then you have just enough time to like pick, and then it just seamlessly goes with it. It's not like pause and then it like skips a beat as it loads the next thing. It's pretty seamless.
Did either of you guys have the DVD? I don't know if the Blu-ray does this, but the DVD of Final Destination 3 had a similar kind of a thing where basically the cutscenes were interspersed throughout the movie, and every once in a while it would say, "What do you do here?" And you could basically pick the cutscene, and it would be something more gruesome, or it'd be a different character that got killed. So this is kind of not new, but it is, because I have a feeling this is way above and beyond what Final Destination 3 was doing with its Blu-ray or with its DVD.
Well, that's the thing. There are definitely movies that have done it before, but like you said, it's usually like a deleted scene, or maybe this character will die, but like it doesn't change the overall movie or experience. It's just like additional footage. This one, you actually like can steer the course of the story and like change things.
Now that I think about it, there was that Return of House on Haunted Hill thing, the sequel.
That did it too.
Yeah, the sequel to the Dark Castle one, which I think was a bit more detailed and wasn't just deleted scenes. Honestly, when I heard about Bandersnatch, the first thing that came to mind was Dragon Quest.
Yes.
Yeah, Dragon Quest, yes.
This is Dragon Quest via Black Mirror, and
this is a 21st century Dragon Quest.
And it won't eat all your quarters.
You don't have to watch an older kid play it in front of you to know what you're doing.
Yeah. But it will eat up a lot of your time, though, because as they said, there's like 5 hours of footage that you can bounce between. And there are some decisions where like it ends it pretty quick, and some, like, I think Lindsay and I went at it for a solid like 2.5 hours last night before we hit an end point where it was like, I think Netflix at a certain point, it goes, okay, we're rolling credits. You've done enough back and forth thing.
That's why I haven't played it yet, or well, I guess played it, not watched it, played it. I like to know. I mean, the first thing I check on movies is running time. I like to know how big of a block to set aside, and you can't really do that with Bandersnatch. You have to,
But you can too. It depends on how much control you have with yourself, because there were many times where it's like the credits will start rolling, and then because of how the format of the story and the plot and everything, you can go back to certain points, but like things will be different. Like I think one of the first times that we hit a point where it was like an end game thing and it went back, I was like, oh, we already hit an end game thing. Now we're going back. And then things were off. The characters were reacting to that alternate timeline just a little bit. So, and nothing was the same, or it went back to a previous decision, but your two choices were radically different. Or it was like a small difference that took it into a completely different route. So there were many times to exit. So it's a matter of, do you feel comfortable enough leaving this round at that point? But also, I am such a completist dork that I would want to go through it and play every damn decision you could. I would want to see every frame of footage. That's my issue right now. That's my issue, especially since there was there was like one part where it required you to enter in numbers, like it was like, put in these, I'm trying not to spoil it, but it's just like, put in these numbers, and it's like, wait, what? And then we actually had to pick the numbers and put them in, but we didn't get it right. And then like we couldn't, no matter how many times like in the story we went back, that wouldn't play out again. So it's driving me insane a little bit.
So you had to kind of solve like a numbers puzzle? Something
like that. I don't know. It's, You kind of have to watch it yourself. That's the big thing. Yeah. And the good thing about this, too, is there's really no spoilers, because, I mean, everyone's going to go a different route. Even if you make one decision, it might be slight because of the small decisions. Like, there's one point in the very beginning, there's a lot of what seem like inconsequential choices. Like, at one point, the character's in a record store, and it's like, do I pick, Tangerine Dream or this other album? And I'm like, well, fuck yeah, Tangerine Dream. But then once I finished, I was like, wait, did that little insignificant choice have like a huge like ripple effect throughout the entire story? Like, I think it does a really good job of making you think that a lot afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, that first choice between Sugar Bombs and Frosted Flakes sounds like it could be a big deal.
It might not. I don't know. I haven't played it a second time yet, but maybe soon.
What else has been going on? You guys see anything else cool?
Well, not exactly horror related, but I really dug Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I saw that twice.
Yeah, I loved it. I went to it just because I saw Peter Porker Spider-Ham in the
John
trailer,
Mulaney.
and I'm like, okay, I'm in. This is going to be cool. But it is a really fun movie, and the animation is crazy. It's like a comic book. It's barely more than two-dimensional. But there's also places where it almost looks like they forgot to give you 3D glass. Did you see it in 3D?
Yes, I did see it 3D at one point.
Okay, because I saw it only in 2D, and there's some points where it looks like the background, it's like they forgot to give you 3D glasses. And
yeah.
I mean, it's an effect that they purposely put in there. It's for like depth perception, but you're like, well, the animation's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because my dad called me because he wanted to see it because he's a Marvel fan, and he thought that, they forgot to give him 3D glasses, and then, I explained the whole animation thing. So it is interesting how they did that. It was a whole unique animation style. So, and
they're trying to patent it.
I mean, just
which I don't know how well that's going to go for them, but
I think it's a little bit more complicated than that, but either way, just I'm ready for more. But also on the horror front, American Cinematheque's Cinematic Void did a bunch of Christmas horror movies, but very obscure ones that were a lot of fun. Like, I saw Dial Code Santa Claus for the first time. The French, basically it's this French horror movie, like survival horror, that came out before Home Alone, that's about this little kid on Christmas who is being stalked through his mansion by this psychotic dude dressed as Santa Claus, and he has to protect his diabetic blind grandfather at the same time. And it's legitimately thrilling, and it's got like some funny moments here and there, but it's bananas. But it was really well done, and it's coming out on Blu-ray next year from I think America Genre Film Archive. So if you get the chance, definitely check that out.
Cool. So those of us who didn't go to that screening are going to get to see it.
Yep. It'll be more available.
Right on.
And aside from that, they did a screening of Bloodbeat, the Wisconsin French samurai Christmas movie, which I'm not really a big fan of, but it was interesting to see on the big screen. And they played the Kindred's, Jeremy Ormrau's first movie, The Dorm That Dripped Blood, which was very subversive slasher movie. I dug it. But the best of the best was Roberta Findlay's The Oracle, which I went in with fairly low expectations because it was just about this yuppie couple moves into this apartment where the psychic lived, and she finds this thing called the Oracle, which is kind of like a Ouija board, except it writes instead of searches stuff. And like the ghost of this guy visits the wife and is like trying to get her to solve his murder. And so it's like a supernatural thriller because you got this ghost, and like occasionally people who mess with the Oracle board get attacked by demons and stuff. But also, like, as she's investigating the crime, she's being stalked by hitmen and killers. So it is just bananas. And I loved it. And yeah, and it's set around Christmas and New Year's, so holiday horror. So, and that's the thing, like the classics like Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Christmas Eve and all, they're great, but I love finding the deep dive holiday horror stuff.
Like American Psycho.
Yeah.
American Psycho is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, remember that scene where he's holding the Christmas pig?
With the reindeer ears? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to our top 10.
Yeah.
All right.
We have done a consolidated top 10 for you because there's three of us, and sometimes we disagree, but we have come up with the top 10 monsters in Rampage.
Yes. So starting off with number 10, Malin Ackerman. Now listen, I know she wasn't a big mutated monster, but you know what?
We're not really, but we had to give a shout out. Rampage is not on our list because it transcends the list. Rampage Rampage is kind of our spirit movie right now, I think.
Yeah, it's the soul of this podcast.
Yeah.
Because it's not great, but some people enjoy it.
I've heard that it's on Blu-ray, DVD, and streaming from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment.
Yes, please,
Is that
Warner
right?
Brothers. You can wire transfer us money or send us checks, Warner Brothers. Thank you.
We will gladly wear any and all Rampage-related merch.
I'm still waiting to go into a Walmart because they always have like a big toy display for Rampage. I'm still waiting for all that to go to clearance. I know it's going to happen soon.
I waited on those Stretch Armstrong guys that we have, and it never happened. So finally, I just bit the bullet and bought them, and they still haven't gone to clearance. So it seemed to be a good move because I have them now.
Yeah, I did not wait on those. As soon as I saw them, I was like, fuck, I'm getting all three.
Because they're modeled after the video game, so it makes them even cooler.
But they're so noisy.
Well, yeah, especially when you're checking out because you are carrying them around. When you move them, in case you don't know what these toys are, when you move them, they start going,
making smashing noises. So when you have that one cart that one of the wheels is slightly off, it's constantly shaking them, and you're just going through the store, a grown-ass man with just that and a box of Cheez-Its, and people are looking at you like, the fuck is wrong with this adult?
Let's get to our list. We have done a compiled list for you, and number 10 on our list, starting it off, is The Endless.
Yep.
Which was Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson's kind of their follow-up to Resolution, or to Spring, which was a follow-up to Resolution.
Well, this is follow-up to both.
They're all... it's interesting, 'cause it's not really a spoiler at this point because everybody knows that they exist in the same universe, because there's one of the coolest gimmicks of The Endless has to do with their older movies, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, there was a lot of twists and turns in that movie. It definitely went in directions I didn't expect it to, and frankly, I love it just because it had one of the best forms of exposition I've ever seen in a movie, courtesy of a really pissed off tweaker. Just kind of explaining the cosmic horror and flipping off the moon. Like, that scene was incredible.
Yeah, the whole thing itself is, it deals with these two guys who escaped this weird UFO cult, and then they get a videotape in the mail, and they're like, we got to go check this place out. So they go back, which you can tell that, because it's a horror movie, that wasn't a good idea.
Honestly, we're going to go through this list. I'm terrible at seeing current movies, so I haven't seen a lot of them. But The Endless was one of the few that I started watching and for whatever reason did not finish. Not because of the quality of the film, just, fell asleep. But that's definitely on my need to rewatch list right now.
It's a good one. Let's move on. Number 9 is, and I actually forgot that this even was this year. That's how long ago this was. But Ritual. It's a Netflix original from, I feel like it was back in like March.
I think it was January, February?
Yeah, was it earlier than that? Yeah, I know that when everyone was hyping up the Cloverfield Paradox, The Ritual just kind of slid in after it and is a much better movie is an understatement. It is a way better movie than the Cloverfield Paradox.
Yeah, I was very upset that everyone was talking about... Well, it's understandable why you would talk about a new Cloverfield movie than, a new one, but than a new IP, but still, Ritual was so much better than Cloverfield by miles.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the whole Cloverfield Paradox thing was because they did that admittedly genius marketing thing where they released the trailer day of during the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they basically said, it was the first commercial break of the Super Bowl, and they said, watch it after the game. And you're like, what? And then you go to Netflix, and it actually says, after the game. You're like, whoa. But enough about Cloverfield Paradox. Let's talk about Ritual.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool. It's about a few friends who, after a tragedy, decide to go on a big hike together, and... they're out in the wilderness, and they end up getting, without spoiling anything, they end up getting wrapped up in some weird supernatural shenanigans out in the forest. And it also features one of the most terrifying monster designs I have seen in a movie in quite some time.
Yep. Second only to one that's a little higher on our list.
We'll be getting into that.
We'll talk about. We got more. Let's keep going. Number 8 on our list is Ghost Stories, which is an adaptation of a West End London play that I actually always wanted to see the play, but I don't get out to London because I think it was Adam Green on the Movie Crypt was hyping up the play and how horrifying it was, and I'm like, oh, that's for me, but he wouldn't actually say anything about it because he said even knowing the premise is a spoiler. But I'm going to tell you the premise of Ghost Stories. It's about a paranormal debunker who he's like a professional skeptic, basically. And there's another professional skeptic who's on his deathbed, and he says, here are these 3 cases I could never solve. Please do me a favor, solve these cases so I can die knowing that there is no afterlife. And it's kind of presented as an anthology because he goes to these different cases, but they're all told through the common thread of the debunker, so it doesn't feel like an anthology, although it really pretty much is.
It kind of was, just different stories kind of with the debunker guy as a framing device. It is a very tense supernatural thriller, and I like because I don't know, it felt like traditional ghost stories, the stuff you hear about, people working the graveyard shift and seeing something out in the darkness. So I feel like it did a good job of capturing the essence of what makes a good ghost story.
And it not only captures, because what I really liked about the movie was the fact that it took a lot of traditional stuff, like you said, traditional ghost stories, or even just the format of an anthology film, and played with it quite a bit, especially the structure of anthology, where there were times where it felt like the stories were melting together, or like the storyteller and the story, there was kind of almost no line between the two, and it did a really good job of just kind of keeping you on your feet as this character was kind of coming to gripes, both the skeptic and the dying skeptic were coming to gripes with, is there an afterlife? Because they constantly are trying to disprove it, trying to constantly be like, oh, there's the wire, there's the old man in the mask. But, the way that it's told and everything just really puts you in a mindset of just unease.
By the time you get to the ending of Ghost Stories, it just kind of goes, not really off the rail, it just goes batty. And, truthfully, you can kind of see the ending coming, down Sunset Boulevard, but it is still pretty effective. It's still a pretty fun, one of those endings when it shows up. So just know that everything does tie together. It's not just a bunch of unrelated anthology stories. So
right. It's hard to talk about without spoiling too much.
Yeah, I'm going to try and not do. I almost feel like I said too much saying that you see the ending coming down Sunset. But all right, let's move on to number 7, which I loved. I kind of wish it was higher, but this is a compiled list. Upgrade.
Yes.
Upgrade is I've been describing Upgrade to people as what Venom would be if Venom was the kind of movie that Tom Hardy thought he was making when he was making Venom, because Venom, with the exception of Tom Hardy, Venom took itself way too seriously, and Upgrade doesn't really. Upgrade is Logan Marshall Green, who is the poor man's Tom Hardy. He plays a guy who gets paralyzed, and then they put a computer chip in his spine that allows him to move again, but also gives him superpowers. So what does he do? He goes after the people who paralyze. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, because
obviously.
There's an AI that he talks with, and that's his operating system. Yeah, that's the thing. Upgrade is kind of in the realm of action, but there's definitely a lot of horror elements to it. Again, without going into it too deeply. And it was Lee Winnell, from the Saw and Insidious movies. Wrote and directed, and it shows it's got a lot of his trademark dark humor, but also he was able to make a lot with a little, because the budget wasn't really that big, but you couldn't really tell, because there are so many great set pieces and science fiction elements that it just looks amazing.
I want one of those self-driving cars.
Yeah.
until it goes crazy.
Yeah, those.
Then I don't want it.
Those funny, like, without going into it too deeply, Lee Winnell was tweeting about some article that was saying that self-driving cars will lead to people having more sex on the road, and Lee Winnell was just like, I called it. You saw it. I called it an upgrade.
But it's true. I think it would lead to more like that and drinking and driving. Although, would it be drinking and driving if you're not really driving?
Drinking and riding.
I mean, I guess it wouldn't be too bad because it's self-driving. But anyway, yeah, there's a lot of gore in this movie too, because that's the thing. It's action. It's more action, but like RoboCop, there's some pretty intense and brutal scenes of murder in there.
One of the coolest things about Upgrade for me was I want to know how they shot it, because it almost looks like they might have shot the fight scenes in slow motion, because the way that Logan Marshall Green moves is so fluid and quick because a computer's controlling his body. And he can calculate what's coming before it comes. So he's always a step ahead of whoever he's fighting. So, the guy will throw a punch and he's like out of the way before you even see it. I'm dying to know how they shot those, if they shot them in slow motion and then just kind of sped it up, but the stunt people were good enough to know, what will look good when they speed it up. It's the fight scenes are crazy, and I would love to have been, a PA watching them shoot those fight scenes, honestly.
Hey, you would have been picking up trash around set while they were doing it. If you were PA.
Lee Winnell just bossing you around.
Getting Lee Winnell's coffee.
Yeah. No, you'd be on a Starbucks run.
What? I missed shooting the scene? Okay, let's move it on. Number 6. Another one that I absolutely loved that is pretty recent, Overlord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Overlord is... it starts off kind of Dunkirk, Saving Private Ryan's, and Glorious Bastards, but then it goes full Reanimator. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun. And thankfully, if you listen to the podcast before, I think I said this then, thankfully it's not a zombie movie. And it's not a Cloverfield movie. Those were the two big things I was most worried about. And it's neither. And as a result, it is one of the best movies of the year.
Which is very surprising, because for me at least, the trailer dropped, and I was like, wow, that is a terrible trailer. This looks like Asylum with a bit of a budget. But then I found out shortly after the trailer dropped, one of my buddies actually auditioned for that movie, like a couple weeks before the trailer, like not too long before the trailer dropped. So it's definitely looks like one of those movies where they did all the effects and everything first, and then they brought in actors and then did all that, which I found to be interesting, because it was like, wait, how could you be doing auditions? And it wasn't for like a bit part. They were like casting like the main people, and that's who he was going for. And then like a few weeks later have a trailer drop. Like I really want to know more about the process on how that got made, because from what it sounds like to me, at least from what I understand it, I could be wrong, it sounds like an insane process, and then still come out with like a great movie. Mm-hmm. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, because it was a mashup movie. It was a war movie and a horror movie, which there are a few, like The Keep, Dog Soldiers, that sort of thing. Although, I was surprised that it was able to be a mainstream movie like that. But yeah, because that's the thing. Like some of the Dunkirk, flight scenes were more tense than some of the monster scenes. Although they did a real great job with their monsters too. And yeah, I feel like this is definitely one of the more underrated genre movies to come out this year too. Because there was some buzz, but I think it did all right. But yeah, it deserved way more attention than what it got.
It came out around the same time as Halloween, so yeah. it kind of got buried in that regard. So moving on to number 5, and our number 5 collectively is Suspiria. I have to admit, I don't know how to say his name, Luca Guadagnino. I think I might have butchered that, but I have to admit I was skeptical when I heard he was redoing Suspiria, because this is the Call Me By Your Name guy. This is, well, I was actually even more skeptical when I found out it's an hour longer than the original.
2.5 hours in total.
Yeah. So, but I have to say, the first 2 hours of it, I absolutely love. Absolutely love. I do think that it kind of goes off the rails in the third act, and if you've seen it, you know exactly what I mean. Because because it becomes not really a different movie, but it goes places where you are kind of like, okay, we're going. Here's where we're at. You know, I mean, it's not really a surprise where it goes, but the last act goes on forever too, and I think that is. I mean, nothing is by chance in this movie, so I think he was going for just like catharsis and driving it home, and he did. You can't accuse him of not committing to the project.
That's true. Yeah, I thought it was very well done. I do want to rewatch it because I only saw it once in theaters, but I think it definitely was a great remake because it did what all great remakes do, in that it takes the original and follows a different perspective or expands upon the story. And in this case, again, without going too deep into it, it kind of gives us more the Coven's point of view, because in the original we follow Susie Bannion mostly, but in this we kind of get to see the inner workings of the dance house Coven. So, but that doesn't detract from the horror, because like I got to give the movie credit. It has one of the most like just nerve-wracking, intense horror scenes I've seen in a horror movie in a long time. Like I was just I was just cringing the whole time just watching it. And for those of you who've seen the movie, I'm sure you can already guess which one I'm talking about. And also got to hand it to the casting, because great cast, especially Tilda Swinton in multiple roles, because
she plays 3 roles.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure she, if not a witch, she is some sort of magical supernatural being, some sort of
shapeshifter. Yeah, because she plays an old man, and then and then 2 women. But yeah, she's a chameleon. She's one of Luca's muses, I think, though, because in a bigger, and also Dakota Johnson was also in A Bigger Splash with Tilda. And she was in, I mean, I'm a Dakota Johnson groupie though. I think that Luca's Suspiria, I'm pretty sure I'm saying his first name right, so I'm not even going to attempt the last name anymore. It does a better job of explaining Argento's 3 mothers, not really concept tree, I guess, than Argento did, because you understand what the 3 mothers are coming out. Although when Argento made Suspiria, he might not have even known. It took 2 other movies for him to figure it out.
Yeah, and the third one of the Mothers trilogy,
that's because he knew it was going to be a trilogy and had to make a movie.
He was just like, I gotta finish this. Yeah.
Although I will say that I do hope Luca makes a sequel and does Inferno. Yeah, because I can only begin to imagine how he tackled that one.
Also, Suspiria had Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead gets all the accolades for being the film scoring guy, but Tom York did the score for Suspiria, and it's pretty crazy. And the song Suspirium from it, which is weird because it's not. I mean, it's a song, but it doesn't seem like it would be an Oscar song, but it is on the short list for best original song for a motion picture. So Suspiria may end up, we may see Tom York performing Suspirium at the Oscars.
Which would be fantastic.
That would be cool.
It would be pretty cool. It would be pretty cool. Okay, after Suspiria, going to number 4.
Top 4.
Now.
Final 4.
Yeah, we're in our top 4. Number 4, Annihilation.
Yes.
And this is what we were talking about when the scariest monster design of the year. And if you've seen Annihilation, you know the monster we're talking about. It ain't the giant crocodile.
Yeah. And if you guys know, I mean, if you've listened to previous episodes, you know I fell asleep my first screening of it in theaters and woke up to the infamous bear scene.
That fucking bear.
Which is one of the most terrifying experiences I've had in a movie theater, to just be like asleep. And you know when you're asleep and your brain's trying to keep up with it, but it's not, and then you come to it and like what's happening on screen is not what's happening in your mind. Just to come to that was terrifying, but yeah. I have watched it many times since, and God, that is just a beautifully made film all together. I agree with James. The third act, it kind of goes like a very extreme way, which can go well with some and not well with others, but overall, just like the overall feeling of depression and anxiety and all wrapped up in a very Lovecraftian story was phenomenal.
This is another one where I was in love with the first 2 acts, and then it just kind of goes off the rails. And I think what it is the way I explain it to people is basically Under the Skin, the movie Under the Skin, is the 3rd act of Annihilation. And it works in Under the Skin, and I don't think it works as well in Annihilation. But I've kind of come to grips with it, but I still wish that they had done some other things with it.
Well, I kind of agree with your sentiment on Suspiria, but I don't agree with your sentiment on this one. Like, I thought the 3rd act in Annihilation was brilliant. Again, can't really go into it, but it just does such an amazing job of putting cosmic horror on screen. I still think about it, and some people compare it to a music video, and in that case, it's like one of the most haunting music videos I've ever seen.
But don't you think it goes on about 10 minutes too long? Really? Okay.
I feel like just the dragging adds to the tension. But also, I want to talk about the bear scene a little bit, because holy fucking shit, that bear! All I can think about is like Stephen Colbert would refer to bears as godless killing machines, and that's basically how I feel about that particular bear.
Not just any bear. This is a bear that can imitate people it's killed.
Well, I mean, it's like that's the thing. It has the most horrifying voice I've heard, because it's a mixture of a bear growl with the anguished cries of its victims. And and also I thought it was interesting. Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama, recently released his best of list, and Annihilation was on there. And God, I would have loved to have been in the room when that bear came in, just to see his reaction. And again, great casting. I love Natalie Portman.
Great female cast. It was all actresses,
pretty much all
actresses in the main parts, which is again really, that's another major milestone for it, is the fact that and that's what sucks too. Like, I wish it got more attention when it was out in theaters, because you don't get to see a lot of ensemble casts where it's just all women, Yeah,
there's only like 1 or 2 other male actors, really. So and I forget who played the husband, or
Oscar
Isaac. Right.
Yeah, Oscar Isaac was he was the other main, and then there were basically side players, agents interviewing people.
But aside from that, it was like that's the thing. It's like a reverse The Thing, because it was, instead of like a team of male scientists, it's a team of female scientists out on an expedition.
Yep. Jennifer Jason Leigh in charge of them,
and Gina Rodriguez. Wow, because I remember watching it going, who's this actress? She's phenomenal and badass. Like, she could play Vasquez in Aliens. Like, they were to do another movie with her. I'm like, I think Gina Rodriguez, who is this person? I look her up. I'm like, oh, it's Jane the Virgin. Wait, what? Like, completely different ends of the spectrum. Like, she not only was a badass, but because of what the movie gets to when they're in the bubble and deep into it, and just the psychology of it and psychological breakdowns they have, she brought a lot of depth to it. So it wasn't just her being I'm badass. It was a lot of depth to her character too.
And again, I really need to emphasize that I feel Annihilation is probably one of the best examples of capturing Lovecraftian and cosmic horror on the screen, because it's it doesn't give you any easy answers. There's just something really crazy from another world out there, and it's fucking shit up.
Maybe that was my problem, because I prefer Poe to Lovecraft.
That's the age-old rivalry.
Yeah.
I'm Team Poe.
Which white person was more depressing back in the day? Poe or Lovecraft? I think we all know who was more racist, but...
Not going to deny that one.
With that, let's move on to our number 3. Are we on 3? We're on number 3. Our collective number 3 is Halloween.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which, this is another one that I was skeptical when they announced it, but then Jamie Lee Curtis is on board. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm interested. And then John Carpenter came back to do the score.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, I'm listening, and I was so relieved that I loved this movie.
Same.
It falls somewhere between just the sheer suspense of the first one and the utter brutality of the Rob Zombie remakes. It's, because it's definitely not a PG-13. I mean, it's pretty gruesome, but it's also got a lot of cool, just like those scenes where like, oh, now you see him, now you don't, those kind of things.
Yeah, and it's great that it was coming from David Gordon Green and Danny McBride of all people. I've been a fan
those
of
comedians.
Yeah, I've been a fan of their. Yeah, comedians are fucked up. Go figure. But yeah, no, I was a big fan of some of their previous work together, like Vice Principals and
Eastbound and Down.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are some elements that lend themselves to this, because there actually was a subplot with a masked assailant in Vice Principals, but yeah, no, they really knocked it out of the park with this, because they really recaptured what made the original so terrifying, and at the same time, they kind of had their own spin on it, and just because the whole major theme was Jamie Lee Curtis, is back after all these years, and it's directly to the original, so it's just kind of dealing with the fallout after Laurie Strode survived that night, and just how it affected her all these years later, and she's just waiting for Michael to come back because she knows he'll come back, and he does come back.
And that's the thing, because like I was on board from the get-go. First of all, I want more Halloween, and I want more Halloween without Rob Zombie's involvement, so I was already super on board with that. And then everything came together, but I went into it after watching the trailers countless times thinking like this is going to be Laurie's Terminator 2. This is we're going to see her go from the, shy and kind of meek, babysitter, or, like in Terminator, from the waitress to this badass fighting machine. And she did. She definitely was badass as shit. But they also got into, like, really drove home, like, the effects of what that night had on her. And we're all sitting there going, well, in comparison to the whole series, she's only witnessed like a couple murders out of how many, of Myers's body count. So it kind of feels like that night wasn't significant, and that film really brings back like how significant like that one night where it was and it's weird to think like, oh yeah, only a few people got killed, but we're talking about a slasher film here. But really like the psychology and how it could break someone, but like what you can do with it. And I really think like it not only was a great horror film, but it was a great character study as well of someone with PTSD and paranoia and anxiety, and coming back from that, and and how that affects their family as well. The
thing that struck me about Halloween is it's a Halloween movie for fans by fans, because you can tell Danny McBride and David Gordon Green are big fans because just of all the little winks and nods and, homages to the original film that were in it. Some of them are just like hilarious, when you see, it's like the bigger fan you are, the more fun the movie is.
And shout out to the Season of the Witch reference in there too, with the kids walking by and the shamrock masks.
Yeah, I love that. There are a lot of fun Easter eggs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and some of them were obvious. Like they set up the same shots from the first movie those are hilarious. You could tell the people in the theater that got those because they'd start laughing whenever they'd see it, which was moving on to our number two. Our number two is Hereditary,
yes,
which for my money has the biggest oh shit moment of the entire year. It's such a big oh shit moment that I actually went back. I saw it at a press screening, and then I went back opening night to see it with a full crowd because I wanted to watch the crowd during the oh shit moment, because I wanted to see them all go oh shit.
But there were so many I know what moment you're talking about, but there were a few others too.
Yeah, but there is the big one. There is a very, very
big one.
Oh, of
the
course.
Game Changer. Yeah. It's a different movie.
And I gotta bring this up. Can you believe that this is Ari Aster's feature debut?
I can believe it, and I can't wait to see what he has next, because he knows how to make a movie.
Oh yeah.
And I only hope that he keeps making horror movies. I'm hoping that he doesn't move on to. I'm hoping he doesn't leave us behind. Is basically what I'm trying to say. I want him to keep making horror movies.
You don't want him pulling a Spielberg.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just really hope Toni Collette gets nominated.
Yeah,
because her performance in that is just incredibly moving in the most terrifying ways possible. And you're gonna we've already got many people being like, oh, it's not a horror film, it's a family drama with psychological thriller aspects. It's like, come on, there's no, it's a horror film.
It's about possession. Yes, it's a horror movie.
But it's so good, and like she put I can't believe someone could like really put their body through that much emotional strain. Like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, I literally thought, like, you feel like she's having breakdown in real life on screen.
Has anybody tried to say that Halloween was not a horror movie?
No.
I'm just wondering if because it seems like every movie, that's not a horror movie.
Unless it's like an established 40-year-old IP, you know.
Yeah, I feel like this has been a running theme for us this year, that like just the definition of horror keeps on bouncing all over the places.
Yeah.
Or it's getting way more complicated than it needs to be.
I think with Halloween, the closest someone has gotten that is me keep saying that it's a good character study and a good family drama. But I'm not saying it's not horror. I'm saying it has that within a horror film.
It can be a character study and a family drama and still be a horror movie, yeah.
It was great that Ari Aster sought out to be evocative of specifically 70s horror, you know, like Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, Don't Look Now, which I feel like he effectively did, because, you know, the common theme between all those movies was, you know, just the more grounded horror and drama combined with the supernatural elements. Because, I mean, a lot of those movies were about the devastation on a family, and this is about one hell of a devastation on a particular dysfunctional family, which is the thing. Like, the family moments in some cases were more intense than like the horror moments.
Particularly Don't Look Now is completely about grief and loss, and there's a lot of that in Hereditary as well.
I mean, and that film just does such a good job of evoking certain things. Like, I know when we talked about it before, I bring up that it's what it made a child chewing on a candy bar just get under the skin. But even just like thinking back on it, there's like some part, like there's some scenes that when I think about, I can smell gasoline, and I think that's intense, that, you know, you can create that type of atmosphere with imagery and with and like bringing you in so much that it starts to evoke your other senses. And like, there was a few scenes where I'm like, I think I smell gas, but not really. Like, I knew I did it, but I'm not saying, you know, but anyways.
Yeah, although back at the family drama, like one of the more memorable moments to me, again, without revealing too much, is when Toni Collette's character tells off her son, because like I remember all the air got sucked out of the room when, you know, she said that thing to him. And also the movie has made me afraid of tongue clicks. Like, anytime somebody does a tongue click and I don't see who's doing it, like, I get freaked out.
I've had it a few times, like, especially when I went back to Amoeba for the holidays to work a couple of shifts. Someone made a tongue click far away, and I was just like, no, not right now. Go away.
It's happening.
All right, let's move on to number one. Number one, the Ion Horror number one is Slender Man.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. We would not do that to you. As a bonus, we each have our own number ones. So, Jacob, go first with as if we don't know what your number one is if you listen to the show. Jacob, what's your number one?
Yes, I decided to go with American Animals. No, I'm kidding. It's Mandy. It's Mandy. Of course, it's Mandy.
Shocker.
Well, like I said, you know, I'm a huge fan of Panos Cosmatos, and I've been like on the edge of my seat waiting for another movie from him since I saw Beyond the Black Rainbow in 2012, and Mandy did not disappoint. You know, just because it is just such a visceral and hypnotic movie, and it's a revenge thriller, but it goes well beyond that. And I gotta say, like, that performance from Nicolas Cage should be Oscar worthy. You know, just because that is by far like one of his best performances. Just, you know, he shows the emotion, shows the rage, and I love that he used Jason Voorhees as a character study, or like inspiration for his character later in the movie, because it is basically just Nicolas Cage as Jason Voorhees bumping off these hippie cultists, and it's like it just had such an effect on me. Like, I saw it 3 times in theaters, and I loved each one. And I've seen it God knows how many times on home video. Oh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the excellent and penultimate, the final score by Johan Johansson, which sadly did not manage to meet Academy standards, so won't be getting a nomination or consideration.
Well, I don't think they expected Mandy to be as popular as it was. They didn't. They would have had to give it its qualifying theatrical run before home video, and they didn't do that. That's why it doesn't meet
it's bullshit, though.
standards. Yeah, it kind of is, especially because it is his final score. Because, and I know we joked about it last time. I have seen Mandy now, and I have to say I'm Team Korea on it. It starts out really slow. It picks up a little bit, but I wasn't a fan of Beyond the Black Rainbow either. So I was, it was just a little too draggy for me, but the score is incredible. The score is one of the best of the year, and it is a shame that it doesn't qualify, because it would be a great way to send Johan Johansson off. And
the movie's got to be given its due, because it is already a cult sensation, because it only had like a limited theatrical run, but it's kept on selling out theaters, and like the demand was so big that they put it back in theaters. And like I was at a midnight screening at the New Art last month, and it was completely sold out with a line like 3 blocks long.
And people who were in markets where it wasn't showing theatrically were demanding it. It was out on VOD, but people were, calling their theaters going, get Mandy. So, yeah, it is the very definition of a cult movie, an instant cult movie. People weren't settling for VOD. People wanted to see that on a big screen. So
yeah, and regardless of how you feel, you got to admit the cinematography in that movie was beautiful.
Oh yeah. It's a beautiful movie.
He knows how to shoot a beautiful looking film. He just needs to know how to cut away a couple of times more. And that's my only thing with his films. It's like the pacing. It's like and then it's hard to complain too, because it's like I'm so taken in visually, but everything else I'm very kind of left dry a bit with both Beyond the Black Rainbow and Mandy. But I still like it. I'm never gonna say I don't like his films. They feel draggy for me, is all.
Which I can understand. But also the other reason why Mandy deserves to be my number one, 2 words. Cheddar Goblin.
Cheddar Goblin.
Everything's better with cheddar.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to go next, Kree, or should I?
I can go next if you want.
Go ahead. What's your number one?
All right, so this is actually, again, because as we've definitely demonstrated throughout this episode, I don't get out that much to go see movies in theaters, so I'm not too current or hip with the kids. And but I actually beat Jake and James to see a movie in theaters, and I saw Anna and the Apocalypse. And while I will admit it's not the best film of the year, it's right now my favorite of the year. It's just it's a zombie high school Christmas musical. And the best way to describe it is, I hate when these comparison things. We talked about it with Thoroughbreds, but it really is Shaun of the Dead meets High School Musical. And I know for a lot of people like me, I don't like High School Musical. I really hate those movies. But it best describes it, and it does get there. It does get to those really cheesy, kids in high school singing in the cafeteria musical numbers that are way over the top and way too cheesy. But I didn't hate those parts. I expected to hate those parts, but I was right there in it. And it's just a really good film. It tugs at the heartstrings. The blood, there's not a lot of it, but where it is, it's well placed and well done. And ultimately, it's just a film that knows what it is. It wears its heart on its sleeve. And because of that, it just resonates. And even long after, I'm still singing the musical numbers in my head. I'm still thinking about all the real heartstring tuggers. There is one character I don't really like, and that was the headmaster, who kind of is the zany villain of the story. And he kind of starts off way too over the top, and you don't really get to see that much change with him when the zombie apocalypse hits. But it is one of those films because it's how can you be fresh with zombies? It's so overplayed. And yeah, doing a high school Christmas musical involving zombies, that's definitely different. But they do a really good job of showing the sudden impact of these young people who have essentially their entire lives ahead of them, and then this catastrophic event just take place, and how they're dealing with that. How all their insignificant little moments before then that seemed like life ending or life changing really weren't, especially when compared to, zombie outbreak. And yeah, and the musical numbers, they are catchy as shit. And I've even I bought the soundtrack on vinyl from Amoeba, and it was a signed copy from the director, cinematographer, and one of the actors. So it's definitely one of my new favorite possessions in my record collection.
Nice.
Is it a legit musical? I mean, do they burst into song? And
they burst into songs.
How many people do they need? How many boys? How many girls?
Dude, and I'm telling you, like, even just there's, to really get it, if you guys get the chance, a lot of the scenes that have the music are online already as like an advertising thing, but Hollywood Ending is one of the songs, and you watch it and it's full on, like all the kids are singing in the cafeteria, and they're slamming their hands down, and then it's all choreographed, and there's people dancing on the tables, and it's like you're sitting there and you're like, oh, this is so High School Musical, but it didn't irk me like those type of numbers would. Like, it works all together, especially in the broad scheme of it all, because it's like, oh, we're singing these happy moments when this terrible thing is about to happen, and it doesn't shy away from like the emotional impact of dealing with lost ones or dealing with one's own lost future, Well,
mine, if you can't guess what mine is going to be, my number one is A Quiet Place.
Nice.
And for my money, A Quiet Place is the best movie of the year, horror or not. I think it is just an absolute masterpiece. It's and this is another one, we were joking with comedy guys making horror movies, but this is another one, John Krasinski. This is Jim Halpert, and the world he builds. It's the little things in it, like, they're playing Monopoly, but they're using felt pieces so that they don't tick, 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 when they're going. Just the little things like that they throw. Just the little details is where the devil is on it, and it's. People are always worried when I talk about A Quiet Place. They're like, oh, but wasn't that annoying seeing it in a theater? I saw it twice in a theater. Both times, people were leaving with like 3/4 full popcorn because they were afraid that they were going to make noise. It's that engrossing of a movie. People, they were afraid to make noise. They literally were. It's just this intense, full theater of people leaning forward, hanging on every second of this movie, and that doesn't happen very often. It kind of happened with Hereditary, but it really happened with A Quiet Place, and I just think it's a masterpiece. I think it's a genius little science fiction horror movie.
Yeah, I agree that it was very well made, and just did such a great job of amping up the tension and getting that type of reaction from the audience, because I remember when I saw it too, like, everybody was trying to be as quiet as possible as well.
Oh, I've told the story about how I was the asshole in the back trying to eat kettle chips. And I'm like putting them in my mouth, being like, okay, now we got to try to get it as wet as possible and get it mushy before we keep. No, we crunched too soon. Is everyone looking at me? And then all of a sudden something would happen, or like I would have it in my mouth and like trying to get it to not crunchy, and then all of a sudden something intense would happen. I'd crunch down and be like, ugh, and then everyone would jump even more because of it. So, yeah. Unfortunately, I was that guy.
And that's how you get eaten by a monster. You ate your chips too loud.
Yeah, let's be honest. I would not last long in A Quiet Place world. It would either be I found a bag of corn nuts and couldn't resist, or just, one of my infamous very loud farts would just get me killed.
Everybody always says, well, why didn't they just live by the waterfall? It's like, well, their farm wasn't by the waterfall. What do you... And also someone else brought up an interesting point. They said, well, what if the monsters were just never around when they were at the waterfall, and the one time, they start their conversation, when the monsters are around.
Right. But also, you can't farm near waterfalls that well because it's too rocky. The amount of time and effort that it would take to take out the rocks, you run out of food and energy, and I'm not going to get into farming with you guys.
And also, the creature design on the monsters were pretty neat.
Yes.
The creatures, have you guys seen that? It just came out within the last month. I guess John Krasinski did the motion capture for the creature because he was trying to describe what he wanted the creatures to be like, and the visual effects guy's like, "Oh, why don't we just put the suit on you and have you do it?" And someone, it might have been Emily Blunt, someone snapped a picture of him doing the motion capture, and he's in, the suit with the ping pong balls, doing his thing. So yeah, the motion capture, the creature was John Krasinski doing the mocap for the
that's
creature.
the thing too. Like John Krasinski, basically Renaissance man, because he co-wrote, he co-directed, he starred in, and now he's one. And yeah, so I guess he was one of the monsters.
Yeah, he did the mocap. He probably got a producer's credit.
Yeah, he also produced it. I do remember that. So it might as well have been kind of like the Nutty Professor, that just all the parts should have been John Krasinski.
and he got his wife to play to be in it too.
Oh yeah,
which is a big selling point too, because she's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, she did a great job.
She's phenomenal in anything. I'm a huge Emily Blunt fan.
Also, the deaf girl, I thought she did a great job.
Yeah, Millicent Simmons.
Oh
yeah, she's in. What's the name of that movie? She plays another deaf girl in something last year. Wonderstruck? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think that was it.
She's actually, the actress herself is hearing impaired. So, and that's what Krasinski actually said. He's like, "Oh, it wasn't even a question of finding a hearing impaired actress for that part. You need one." And
right.
They found, luckily, Millicent Simmons was around.
My only thing with the movie, slightly spoilish, but whenever, because there's a few different scenes where it happens, where someone kind of, suicide by cops it, but with the monsters, where they just go out and they go, "Fuck it, I'm done," and then they scream, but they never say anything with the scream. You would think that if this was your last chance to actually say something, you think they would say something, even just like a
Sentimus football rules.
Yeah, or God damn it, Sentimus football rules. But exactly, you'd think they would say something, actually let one last piece of their selves out. But every time it was just flat out just a scream, which which was still powerful, still great in the movie. But that just irked me just a little bit. You're not even going to tell the monsters to piss off, or big fucking titties, something. Just let be the last chance to be a person and have your personality out. But that's my only gripe.
Let's end on Korea saying big fucking titties. Those are our top 10s.
That's how I want to go.
What did we miss?
Some honorable mentions from my...
Yeah, let's do some honorable mentions real quick.
Some honorable mentions from my own top 10 list on iHorror now that I'd still like to talk about. For one, Jen Wexler's The Ranger I thought was really good. It was a very nice throwback slasher, punks versus a psycho park ranger, kind of psycho cop, maniac cop-ish. It did genuinely feel like something from the early 80s, so if you haven't, I'd recommend checking that out. Also, Leprechaun Returns by The Void, Steven Kostanski, talked about before. I thought it was is basically what the 2018 Halloween was to the Halloween franchise. Leprechaun Returns is to the Leprechaun franchise, and it does have some genuinely funny moments, and one of the writers from Ash vs. the Evil Dead was a writer on the film, and she came up with some great jokes. There's a bit with the leprechaun refusing to shine Crocs that I thought was hilarious, and those were good. My
honorable mentions are all going to be movies that normally would be on my list, but they're not quite horror enough. But we have talked about them before. Bad Times at the El Royale is one of my favorites. I love that one. This is Drew Goddard. Basically, he does to the pulp noir genre what Cabin in the Woods did to the horror in the woods genre. You Were Never Really Here, which is Lynn Ramsey's follow-up to We Need to Talk About Kevin, 7 years later. Right. And that one is Johnny Greenwood, not Tom York. That's the other Radiohead guy doing the score. Wouldn't it be something if they were up against each other for the Oscar for Best Score? That'd be great. That would be an awkward rehearsal room. Thoroughbreds. We were talking about Thoroughbreds already. That's another one that's basically Heathers meets American Psycho, and the final performance of Anton Yelchin. Yeah. Now, for me, honorable mentions, I know when we first discussed it, I didn't like it
too much, but Unsane, honestly, my only gripe with that film was just like...
Only because you met Soderbergh. You have to say nice things about
We had a very nice... I met Soderbergh when I worked a couple shifts at Amoeba the other day, and I didn't even realize it was him until about halfway through the interaction when I saw I had to check his ID for his card, and all of a sudden it was like... But we were having a really nice conversation about Ken Russell. That was great. But no, I honestly, Unsane had some extremely unsettling moments. My only gripe was that it looked too much like it was shot on an iPhone. I wish they had done a little bit more to make it I love that it was shot on an iPhone. It was shot for so cheap, but it was very distracting. But other than that, I thought it was... I think if it didn't have that cell phone look, that it would be much higher on people's lists this year. But Unsane was phenomenal in that aspect. Sorry to bother you. Again, not horror, but it very much so is in dealing with a lot of its themes, and especially that third act. And
to say that it's a horror movie kind of spoils that third act, though. But
a little bit, but it's
at this point, everybody knows it's not what the trailer pretends it to be.
For the most part, yeah. And also, Apostle,
Yep.
on Netflix, that was just a brutal movie, and really at times got me in a few places with just not kind of jump scares and whatnot, but also just overall, I think it was Gareth Evans, right? No, yeah, Gareth Evans. Sorry, as his follow up to the Raid movies. The man knows how to do brutal, and I really like that. This is kind of the closest thing I've seen in a really long time to the Wicker Man, but it doesn't try to be Wicker Man. It just goes in a completely different way, and Dan Stevens just plays something that, man's a bit of a chameleon and plays this really unlikable character with weird and dark motives, and just always questioning, is he really the protagonist? Is he really the good guy in this story? And even when compared to the fanatics around him, it's interesting, a lot of those dynamics, I think.
All right. So what did we miss? Let us know at our Facebook page, the iHorror Facebook page. Let us know your favorites, and we'll let you know if we agree. Although it's all subjective, so
it's all in good fun.
Your favorites. Everybody has their favorites. So let's wrap this one. Our theme song is Restless Spirit, formerly DMP. So check them out. Our artwork was done by Chris Fisher, who has not changed his name, but he still does great. He did all the artwork for our all of our year-end lists too over at iHorror. So check him out, and check out our year-end lists at iHorror. Yell at me about mine because it's fringe horror and it's not horror enough. Me, James J. Edwards, you can find me on Twitter at Cinema Ferite. That's Fearite, like verite, but fear. Where can we find you guys on Twitter, Jacob?
You can find me at Jacob Davison _. That is at JACOBDAVISON _ on Twitter.
And I'm Jonathan Korea. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Korean Barbecue. That's CORREIAN BBQ. And don't forget to check us out on Stardust, especially if you liked our special guest Kelly from a few episodes ago. She posts on there a lot. I post on there a lot. We're actually at, I think, about 1.4 thousand or something. It doesn't sound that impressive, but hey, we've been busting our asses on that, so we're proud of the work we're doing there.
Maybe when we get to 1,500, I'll do another video.
Yeah, James pops up once in the bluest of moons.
I really need to start getting more regular about that. That'll be my New Year's resolution. To be more regular on Stardust. You can find any of us, again, at our iHorror Facebook page, or at the iHorror Facebook page, or at iHorror.com, because that's where all three of us live, work, breathe, and write.
Yeah.
And that's it for this time. So let us know what your favorites are, because these were ours, our collective ones, and Rampage rules.
Yep.
Yeah.
For me, James J. Edwards.
And I'm Jacob Davison.
And I'm Jonathan Korea.
Keep your eye on horror.